Hey, everybody, let's take a look at 5 important concepts to elevate your photography or photo art, and yet most photographers get it wrong. Are you ready for this? Let's do it. Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, welcome. And if you could do me a favor, please, and that is like this video, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. So next time I upload a video, you'll be informed on that. Okay, let's talk about this right off the bat. And that is 5 important concepts to elevate your photography. And again, this channel is dedicated to making you a better photographer or photo artist. And this is something I've believed in about, I would say 12 years ago, and yet I kept it quiet to myself. But as I was getting coached by some major photographers, not to mention names, but like a Peter Colson, Joel Grimes, etc., I found out that these people who have been full-time in photography for years, and I'm talking 20, 25, 30 years, thought the same way. But nobody talked about this stuff. And I felt like I was the only one that felt this way. So yet most photographers get it wrong. So let me share this with you right off the bat. Number one is what I want you to think about. And by the way, this is where I have spent most of my money over the last, I'm going to say about 14 years. I've been doing this about 17 years, but say 14 years. And I'm semi-retired, but your education and knowledge, that's where I spent my money the most. In fact, I spent way more money over those years than I have on actual gear. And some of these things that I went to was out of state, so airplane fare, hotel room, the cost of the venue, getting back and that, I mean, a couple of years ago, I could have bought a Canon R5 for what I spent on training for myself, but training is more important to me because that's my best bang for the buck. We'll talk about that a little bit more in depth later. But education and knowledge, it's what's in between your ears. It's so important. Big deal if you got a $20,000, $30,000 camera gear setup. If you don't have the skill level to do anything with it, it's just, again, a waste of money. So education is the key thing right there. The second thing is knowing your subject matter. Now, some people I know will do landscape photography. Some do portraits, weddings, maybe shooting family shoots or something, babies, whatever it is. It's really understanding your subject, how you're shooting it. Is this a headshot versus, no, I'm including them in an environment? What's seen in the environment? In other words, how good are you at putting together your composition with that subject matter based on your needs? And everybody's needs are a little bit different based on what you shoot. So the knowledge of your subject is so important. The third one is understanding lighting. How good are you at lighting? In other words, you might be a natural, I'm a natural light photographer. I don't use any kind of strobes or continuous lights. I just use the natural light outside, the sunlight and stuff like that. Well, if it's a sunny day, you have to know how to change things so you don't get raccoon eyes and real harsh look on your subject if you're photographing a person versus maybe architectural stuff, that kind of thing. But if you're doing strobes, what kind of strobes are you using? Is it flash, your speed lights, or is it actual, like studio strobes? Are you using one light? Are you using 2 lights? Are you using 3 lights? What kind of modifiers are you using? Are you using a reflective board or something like that along with natural light or maybe strobes? So all these things are really important to get really good at modifying and getting the look that you want by understanding lighting. Fourth, lens choice. I love this because what are you going to use? A wide angle lens based on the type of photography you're doing? Are you going to use a zoom lens? Are you going to use, like a prime lens? It's just fixed. And how about like what they call a tilt shift lens to do some unique things, especially in architecture, that kind of stuff. Or some people actually use that for landscapes. and do some stitching with it. So it's really having a good knowledge of the type of lens and what you use your lens for. Now, the reason I'm having fun with this number 4 category and how important it is, I remember learning photography, and this is all I kept hearing from salespeople who want to sell you stuff. Oh, you're going to do portrait photography. Well, the perfect portrait lens for portrait shooting is, and salespeople always will tell you, an 85 mil. That's your perfect portrait lens. Then you get into these camera clubs, all this stuff, and they go, no. It's 100 to 120 mil. That's the ideal lens. And then I meet a guy like Joel Grimes, who I've met numerous times. I worked with him. I had the privilege of actually shooting at his home studio back in Buckeye, Arizona, when he used to live there with his wife. I got to know his wife, Amy. I've had breakfast and lunch and dinner with him numerous times. This guy taught me how to shoot portraits with a 35 mil lens. Did you hear me? 35 mil lens. And everybody's telling you you're crazy, you're nuts. You got to do 85 to 120. Well, over 80% of the time, Joel Grimes shoots 35. So, and I worked with him and my jaw dropped and I go, this is cool. I'm going to put a couple images up real fast just to show you. This was at his home studio. This is a model he uses a lot, Vincent. And the only thing I did with this shot was I just cropped it a little bit so it came out a little bit better balanced in Photoshop. I pulled the shadow slider up a little bit and I added, I think that was it. I just pulled up the shadows. That was it. Basically straight out of camera. Maybe a little bit of vibrance I added, probably in that one. But in Tucson, I was at a venue with them, and we were shooting various subjects. I was doing different portraits. And this portrait I'm going to share with you here, this is, the nickname was Cowboy Joe. We were south of Tucson at this ranch for a getaway shoot. There's about, I think, 75 of us photographers, and worked with Joel on a lot of things here. And this was one of many images that I shot with him and working with him and playing with lighting and that. But that was shot at 35 mil also. And that's all I did. Was the exposure was right on with the settings, with the lighting and that. But that's all I did was recrop it a little bit because I shot it a little bit crooked. And also, that's all I did was I pulled the shadow slider up a little bit, and I actually pulled the clarity slider a bit because I wanted to show that grunge look, the texture in his skin, showing his age. I mean, he was a really cool guy. And so what happened is we were supposed to submit one of our favorite images at this conference, and so I submitted that. And the last day, they had chosen a handful of images to print. Canon had sent one of their large format professional printers there, and mine was the one of them that was selected. And they actually printed out a large 17 by 22 print. And if anybody knows anything about printing and about paper, they use Hahnemuhle William Turner paper, and that is not cheap paper. That is expensive, fine art paper. So I get to walk away with that large print. I had it framed. It's in my house. It really means a lot to me. But the point is, there we go, 35 millimeters. So when somebody says, you got to shoot at 85 or 100 or 120, no, you don't, if you know how to do the right thing. So lens choice is very, very important in building your skills and picking the right lens based on your needs. The very last thing is camera. Does it deliver your needs? And this is what I'm going to emphasize this about cameras. I won't talk about camera model. What do you shoot? Canon? Yes. Okay, I shoot Canon. I don't care if you shoot Nikon. I don't care if you shoot Sony. I don't care what brand you shoot. The brand is totally irrelevant. What matters is, does the camera deliver what you need based on your photography style? So an example, I know for a fact, and experts say this all the time, photographers barely use 20% of the features built into their camera. Period. That's it. Okay. There's a guy that I've been following. I'm thinking about taking a class with him on fine art. He's from, is it the Cape, I don't want to mispronounce his name, Martin Osner from Cape Town, South Africa. And love his stuff. I was actually watching a live broadcast that he was doing, or I can't say a seminar, but it was just a live broadcast about fine art. And he was taking questions. And one of the questions was asked was, what kind of camera do you use? Listen to what he has to say.
Pat asked this, what camera do you use? Pat, I had to put this question in. My answer is one that works. And I'm going to leave it at that, because the camera doesn't matter. It does not matter. As long as it works, if you remove the lens cap and it's able to record light because the shutter and the aperture are working and the ISO and the light meter, it's fine. It's not about the camera, it's about artistic intent. That's like asking a painter, with all due respect, Pat, what brushes do you use? What oils do you use? Which brand do you use? And where do you buy it from? We're not really cared about that. So at the end of the day, exposure, focus, color, distortion, depth, processing, and editing are all characteristics in photography that can be used both to do technical proficient images as well as artistically inclined work. All of this can be drawn into your world of fine art photography.
Okay, see what he said? The one that fits your needs. Manufacture is irrelevant. So I'm going to share something with you. And since some of you know that I was recruited by a school here in Michigan called Midwest Photography Workshops. Again, here in Michigan area, they do a lot of workshops in photography. And I was recruited to do some of their Photoshop classes. They're either a half-day or one-day class. But also, I've been actually teaching classes in the studio with professional lights. And I get invited to other classes that I'm not teaching, but I'll assist in setting up backgrounds and that kind of stuff and backdrops. And I'm allowed to bring my camera and jump in and take a few shots. So I do this to push myself hard. And that is, here's a camera. By the way, I don't know if you can see this or not. This is a Canon G1X Mark III. Now, I had the original G1X, the original one, the first one that came out. Boy, don't even hold me on this date. I think it was maybe 2008 or something like this. This one is going to be 5 years old this year. The reason I bought this, basically it's a point and shoot, but it's got a hot shoe on it, so I can actually use a wireless trigger to use it in the studios, my strobes in my home studio. But it's a travel camera. When I go on vacation, I don't want to lug a bunch of stuff with me. I want something light, easy. It lets me go into places that, say, professional photographers can't, because when I have this over my neck like this, walking around, I look like a tourist with this camera right there. So it has actually got me into places where other people were stopped and say, you need a permit to go in there, that kind of thing, because they saw the big camera, the big lens, and they got the backpack or something with all your other lenses and stuff like that. They couldn't get in, but I walked right in. And this is a 24 meg camera. And the sync speed, because it's a leaf shutter system, 0.02 of a shutter speed is the sync speed for this. I can do really cool stuff with strobes and not have to do high-speed sync with this camera. It's just incredible. Anyhow, I've shot, and I'm going to show you some images here that I actually shot in the studio, and people were laughing at me, like, these people, in fact, one guy had a Hasselblad in the studio shooting with this class, and I'm jumping out with this camera, and I got the wireless trigger on it. And let me show you some of the images I did. I'm not going to bore you with a whole bunch of stuff, but this was a burlesque shot that I did. There you go, right with the camera. More than enough resolution for me. I can do large prints with that. Not a big deal. But after I submit this stuff, people are asking. Photographers always do this. Well, what was your camera? What lens did you use? All this other stuff. And I'm laughing when I say, oh, I used a Canon G1X Mark III. And they go, what? I never heard of that. And then they come back and that's a point and shoot camera. So what's your point? It's a point and shoot. So here's another one. This was more of a sort of a gothic type, boudoir type shoot. Again, right with the camera here. There was the shot. Here's another one. One of my favorite ones. In fact, that was one of my favorite ones that I actually took that and I did a composite And this is one. This is Eileen. It's one of her favorite images. She just loves that composite. That's a printed image, and that could go 20 by 30. There's enough resolution in that. So this thing about 20 some resolution, my shoot's 35, 45, 50. Who cares? I was shooting weddings with an 8 megapixel camera in the early days, and then right here. This camera is going to be 15 years old this year. This has got a lens on it that I bought brand new at a convention back in, I think, 2007. It's the Nifty 50 from Canon. $99 is the regular price. It was on sale only at the seminar or the convention for $89. Now you can't buy these. It's second generation, but it's I think they're like $129 now or something like that. You can open it up to 1.8 with this 50 mil, but it's a basic lens. And I've shot this. In fact, let me show you some images I just did in the fall. Some of you guys have seen this. I was doing some behind the scenes work for Midwest Photography Workshops at an avant-garde shoot, and it was outdoors and things. And I just jumped in and I was using this old camera that shoots 15 megapixel and that inexpensive lens. And this is what I was able to produce with this camera. There's one shot right there. There's another shot right there. And there's another shot right there. And every time somebody says, "Oh, what kind of camera did you use?" Totally irrelevant. That could have been my point and shoot camera, the G1X Mark III. It doesn't matter if you know how to use your camera and it meets your needs. So I'm not into this. I need all this megapixels. In fact, a lot of the manufacturers don't like this anymore. They don't like this because softwares are improving with AI that you could take. I could take this right here, 15 megapixel. I can convert it into a 90 megapixel image. Clear as could be. So why do I need to buy a camera that shoots big megapixel? You're shooting a wedding. I don't want to go more than 20 some pixels. That's ridiculous. I don't shoot weddings anymore, but that was my sweet spot. I mean, 15 on this one, I beat this to death. My first full frame camera was a 20 meg, and I beat that sucker to death, and that became my backup. And I used the, the 60 Mark II. I've had it for years. And it's like, was it 26 megapixels? I don't want stuff that's in the 30s, 40s. It's ridiculous. But now that we have stuff like, oh, this camera's not that really good in low light. Really? The maximum I can go is 3200. Oh, you're going to get a little bit of digital noise. Softwares will take that out today. It is incredible what softwares to do. So the demand and need for, I can shoot what I shoot to get paid for with this camera right here, but I don't. I'll shoot with my full frame DSLR for client work. But if I'm experimenting or just pushing to prove to myself and other people too, that it's not the camera, it's what you do with the camera. Because cameras are so good nowadays that if you have a camera that's at least 5 years old, you got a good camera. I mean, I don't think there's a need to get a new camera. So let's talk about, should you buy a new camera? And there's only 3 reasons why people buy cameras. You may not like what I'm going to say, but it's the truth. Number 1 is, oh, I'm just starting photography. I don't have a camera. Well, okay, you need to buy a camera. I would recommend buying a used camera to start out with. There's no reason to go out and buy an expensive camera. Number 2 reason is I beat my camera to death. You know, your entry-level DSLRs and cameras have a life of about 100,000 frames. Your more expensive ones will do about 300,000 frames. Now, again, depends on how you handle your camera. Do you drop it, bang it around, that kind of stuff. But eventually, to me, it's like a car. You buy a brand new car, and once it reaches around 100,000, yeah, I know if you take care of your car, it'll go further, but you're doing a lot of maintenance, and the water pump goes out, fuel pump goes out, something goes out. You're always replacing, and it gets to a point where you go, I don't trust this on a long vacation trip. It's time to get a new car. Okay, and you may have had that car for 8 years or 9 years or whatever it is, and now it's time to get another one because this one's getting worn down. That's the way I look at cameras. I buy a camera and I just use it. And when it's got a lot of mileage on it, then maybe I'll consider buying a brand new camera. Okay, with that said, the number 1 reason why More, by the way, before I give you the number one reason why more people buy new cameras is, and I see this happen all the time. It's like every Nikon just came out with a new camera. They buy this camera, and then 2 years later or 3 years later, now they have the new one, the Mark II, the Mark III, whatever it is. They got to have that. They got to have that. And to me, it's like, if I'm a lousy driver and I get a brand new car and I go out and buy a brand new car every 2 to 3 years, I'm still a lousy driver. Buying new cars does not make me a better driver until full automation comes in and you just jump in and it drives by itself. We're not quite there yet, but hopefully you got my point. So they always have this attitude that I'll be better photographer if I get a new camera. And it's just a false thing to get into a rabbit hole going down that trap right there. So the number one reason why people buy a new camera, it's to make them feel better. Did you hear what I said? To make them feel better. Now, it's none of my business how you spend your money. And if that's what you want to do and it makes you feel good, do it. I mean, absolutely. But it has nothing to do with you doing better in photography. Exception, because there's always exceptions to all these little guidelines and rules. Let's say I decided that I'm going to be a sports photographer or a wildlife photographer. And what's more important for those people? And not so much the megapixel, but it's how many frames per second can I shoot? And I want incredible, awesome automatic focusing, like animal eye detection or human eye detection to get that focus. Well, this camera right here is not going to do it. My full frame camera isn't going to do it. So if I'm serious to be a wildlife, because maybe I'm going to make money at this, or sports photographer, that's a big deal. Yes, I would go out and get a new camera for that reason and buy the more upscale cameras that have that high frame rate, eye detection, that kind of stuff. That's the exception. But you think about this. There are people that made full-time livings, or they were making money as a part-time business as a landscape or wildlife, I should say, photographer and sports photographer without the new stuff that they have available today and the newer equipment. I mean, I remember film days. There was no autofocus, and it's just incredible. Oh, Steve, you only got one card slot in there. Yeah, and so did everybody else years ago, but yet somehow we survived, right? So a lot of times these things are gimmicky. So I'm just going back to make sure it meets your needs on the camera equipment. By the way, here's one other one I didn't show on the 50D. So let's do a quick recap here. And that is the 5 important concepts. And number one, and again, most photographers have it the wrong way. They're thinking camera is first. You got it wrong. You got it wrong. And it's not me saying this. I'm telling you, top people in the industry who made full-time living at this, who coach people now and stuff, this is what they tell me all the time. I just did it accidentally. And I go from curious to serious. In other words, right now, I'm dealing with a photographer from Australia. I've been watching him for 3 years on YouTube. I'm curious. I'm in that curious mode. Then I'm now in the serious mode with him because I put my money where my mouth is and a part of his closed group with additional training online, specific only to us, the private group that he provides that you're not going to see on YouTube. Then last year in the fall, he happened to come through the United States and worked with him for 3 days in Chicago, hands-on workshop. To me, that is like icing on the cake. So I go from curious to serious to more serious when I go to a live event. And that's just the way I've been over the years. I've been to over 10 things where I've been to live events with a specific photographer that I like to get my education stronger all the time. So education is the key thing. Knowing your subject matter, building your skills in that area, like I mentioned before, understanding lighting, your style of lighting, experimenting with it, understanding what to do with it, lens choice, and building your skills in there. And then the very last thing, again, camera. And again, does your camera deliver what you need? And the cameras I have right now, they deliver what I need for client work. And I will never buy another camera until I break it or something happens to it, then yeah, okay, I'll go out and get a new camera. But as of right now, I have no interest in it because my camera delivers what I need. Now, I will have to admit, most of us have something called gas. And if you've been around as a photographer, you know you have gas. And what gas stands for is gear acquisition syndrome. You know you got that. You buy these latest gadgets and stuff like that. And I've bought stuff, and I'll share some of that stuff in future videos that, hey, I bought this 10, 12 years ago because I was told I had to have this, and I didn't know any better, and it's sitting in my closet, and I've never used it at all. We tend to all do that. We get caught up on different things. But I'm down to a minimalist. I know what I need to use when I do client work, on-location work, that kind of stuff. I had to go through all that. So I got rid of that GAS, that gear acquisition syndrome. I'm very, very strict regarding that. Do I really, really need this? Or does it just make me feel good type of thing? So hopefully you learned something. I know it's a lot to jam. I might have offended some people. I'm presenting this information, but I'm going to tell you, this is what the big boys do or big girls do out there, the players out there who have experience where they've been doing photography. And I'm talking about full-time, 20 or more years, full-time as a photographer, commercial photographer, whatever, not training. Training that I've been learning from people are people who are now retired or semi-retired because they're in their 60s. And occasionally they'll do client work and commercial work, but most of their time now is just guest speaking, running educational programs for people who want to learn from their experience, which I'm a big fan of, which leads me to the number one reason right there. Okay, so with that out of the way, you know my attitude about things, and that is keep thinking out of the box. Get that camera out. Get creative. Get out there and make mistakes. Who cares? It's digital. Get out there, shoot, build that experience up, and I'll see you in the next video. See ya.